That hurts? I think it's infected.
It is, baby. Smells like a winner.
A Kirby Puckett autographed bat trying to kill that spider in your room.
Yeah, you better let Dad take a look at it.
NBC News has just confirmed that actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner has died at the age of 54.
We are remembering the life of Cosby Show actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner.
Oh, wow. Let's see your 50 cents.
But I want you to know I have not forgotten about the time you broke my...
He drowned Sunday afternoon in Costa Rica.
Well, let's see it.
Now, who look at it?
Yeah, where'd you have it done?
Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're here today to talk about something incredibly personal and deeply heartbreaking. The world is still trying to come to grips with the shocking death of beloved actor Malcolm-Jamal Warner. But as the headlines and tributes have started to fade, one voice has been noticeably, painfully silent. Phylicia Rashad. To millions, she was the iconic Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show. But to Malcolm, she was his second mother. For 2 long weeks, she said nothing. But when she finally spoke, her words weren't just a news report. They were the raw, weeping confession of a woman who lost a son. This is the story of what she revealed. A story so full of love and grief that it will stay with you long after this video is over. Please, watch until the very end. It was a quiet morning in early July when the news hit like a thunderclap. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, dead at 54. The headlines were everywhere, screaming the tragic news of the actor who had grown up before our eyes as Theo Huxtable. He had reportedly drowned while on vacation with his wife and daughter in Costa Rica. Social media erupted. Celebrities, fans, and former colleagues posted tributes in disbelief. It just didn't feel real. But in a sunlit brownstone in New York City, Phylicia Rashad sat still, her phone vibrating endlessly with texts and missed calls. She just stared at the screen, at the simple, devastating message that read, "Malcolm is gone." It took her a full hour for the words to sink in. She had always worried about him. Not because he was reckless, he was the most careful person she knew, but because life is so unpredictable, especially for Black men in America. But she never, ever imagined this. A drowning. A peaceful family vacation turned into a final goodbye. Her first instinct wasn't to reach for her phone or to scream. It was to remember. Her mind went back instantly to the first day they met. It was the summer of 1984. The producers of a brand new show, what would soon become The Cosby Show, were desperately searching for the perfect actor to play Theo Huxtable. They had seen hundreds of boys. Some were good, some were promising, but none of them felt right. Then, a 14-year-old boy from Jersey City walked into the room. He had a quiet confidence, warm, expressive brown eyes, and a slow, gentle smile. This boy, Malcolm-Jamal Warner, didn't just read the lines. He became Theo. He made everyone in the room stop and listen, including Phylicia Rashad herself. She was already cast as Claire and was there for the final screen tests. As the story goes, she leaned over to Bill Cosby and whispered, "That's the one." From that day on, she and Malcolm shared a bond that was truly rare. Their chemistry on screen was effortless, and off-screen, it was even deeper. She could read his silences, and he could finish her sentences. It didn't take long for their connection to become something profound and deeply understood. A real maternal bond. She wasn't just an on-screen mom. She became an anchor in his life. "He was my son in every way except birth," she once told Oprah in an interview years ago. "We had something that was God-given, divine." By the time he was 15, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was a household name. Millions of people watched him every week. His face was on posters and magazines, and he was one of the most famous teenagers in America. Fame, as Phylicia often warned him, was both a gift and a dangerous trap. She remembered the long, quiet talks they had backstage. She would gently remind him to stay grounded, to keep his close circle of friends, and to never let the applause drown out his own inner voice. Malcolm always listened. He wasn't like other young stars who got caught up in the fame. He was careful, wise beyond his years. But even with all his maturity, the pressure still weighed on him. Phylicia always knew when he was struggling, even if he didn't say a word. She could just sense it when he walked into a room. "He didn't need to tell me he was hurting," she said quietly in her first interview after his death. "I knew it. I could see it in the way he blinked, in the way he sat. He never had to say it out loud." When The Cosby Show ended in 1992, Malcolm was only 22. While many child stars struggled to find their place after such huge success, Malcolm transitioned beautifully. He directed, he produced, and he made music. Through it all, Phylicia watched with quiet pride. But the entertainment industry wasn't always kind to him. He was often typecast and didn't always get the roles he truly deserved. Despite his immense talent, Hollywood just didn't know what to do with a black man who had grown up in America's living rooms but didn't want to play by its old limited rules. Phylicia often served as his support system. He would call her late at night, sometimes just to vent, sometimes to cry, and sometimes just to hear her voice. "He never outgrew needing a mother," she said tearfully. "That's what made Malcolm so special. He wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, especially with me." And when he had his daughter, his most precious gift, Phylicia was one of the first people he called. She remembers that day perfectly. He said, "Mama Phylicia, I'm a father now." And he just cried. He cried the same way her own son did when he became a father. Just 11 days before the tragedy, Phylicia received a call from Malcolm. It wasn't anything special or dramatic, just a warm, familiar check-in. "Hey, Mama, just wanted to hear your voice," he said. They talked for about 20 minutes. He told her about the trip he was planning with his daughter, how excited she was to snorkel for the first time, and how he had bought her a new waterproof camera just for the occasion. He laughed a lot during that call. "I could hear the ocean in his voice," Phylicia recalled. "That's how happy he was." They ended the call with, "I love you," just like they always did. She had no idea it would be the last time she would ever hear his voice. The news reports said it happened quickly, but grief never moves in fast motions. The day Malcolm-Jamal Warner slipped beneath the water was as clear as it was unbelievable. His daughter had screamed. Witnesses said he had been swimming just a little bit farther out, keeping a close eye on her as she floated nearby. A strong current, invisible and silent, had wrapped itself around him. Surfers noticed him struggling and rushed to help, but by the time they reached him, it was too late. CPR was performed, but the ocean had already taken what it came for. His body was found about 20 minutes later. When Phylicia Rashad received the confirmation call, she simply collapsed into a chair, unable to say a word. She didn't cry right away. The tears would come later, only after her mind could finally accept that the boy she had watched grow up, the man she loved as her son, had died protecting the person he loved most in the world. His daughter. "It's poetic in the cruelest way," she later whispered. "He died a father, a protector, a guardian, just like he lived." After the call, her home felt like a tomb of memory. Everything seemed too loud and too quiet at the same time. The ticking of the clock was unbearable. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing, but she couldn't bring herself to answer it. She wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. Photographs lined her hallway, and one in particular stopped her every time she passed it. It was a black and white photo from the late 1980s. Phylicia and Malcolm on set, his arm around her, both of them, laughing between takes. She remembered that exact moment. It wasn't staged, it was real. He had just told her a silly joke about his hair, and she had burst into laughter. The camera had captured it perfectly. "I kept walking past it," she later said, "and then finally, I just sat on the floor underneath it and cried for hours." It was in that deep silence, not the media silence, but the aching motherly silence, that Phylicia truly began to mourn. Not just for Malcolm, but for the future she had assumed they'd still have. For the birthdays, the holiday texts, the new projects they'd never get to do together. For the family she had lost all over again. What made their relationship so special wasn't just that they had worked together. It was how deeply their connection endured long after the cameras stopped rolling. He called her on birthdays, on bad days, and sometimes on random Wednesdays just to say, "I'm thinking about you." When Malcolm struggled with Hollywood's politics, the roles that never came, the projects that fell apart, the shadow of being typecast, it was Phylicia he called. She had a way of listening that healed you, he once said in a podcast interview. Even if she didn't say anything, she'd just be there. That's what mothers do. Even when life took them to different cities and different rhythms, the emotional bond between them never broke. Phylicia knew about his personal battles, about the heartbreaks he never shared publicly, and about the immense pride he felt as a father. She celebrated his wins with a joy only a mother could understand. One of her favorite memories, she revealed, was watching Malcolm direct episodes of Read Between the Lines, the show they both starred in for a time. Seeing him in that chair behind the camera calling the shots, lifting others up, it filled me with so much joy, she said. I remember thinking, my boy grew up. The world mourned loudly. Tributes came pouring in from celebrities, politicians, fellow actors, and fans who had grown up with Malcolm on their screens. Old co-stars posted heartfelt memories. Legacy networks aired The Cosby Show marathons. News articles about Black fatherhood and representation in media filled blogs and newspapers. But through it all, Phylicia Rashad said nothing. People wondered why she remained so silent. Reporters called her agent. Tabloids speculated that she was too distraught to speak. But what no one understood was that this wasn't a celebrity loss for her. It was a deeply personal and intimate devastation. The world had lost a star. She had lost a son. There are no words in the first days, she explained later. Only memories and the sharp sting of each one. She didn't even attend the first public memorial, not because she didn't want to be there, but because she couldn't bear to hear Malcolm's name spoken in the past tense. The finality of death is cruel, but hearing it celebrated, memorialized, that's when it becomes truly real. And she wasn't ready for that. Instead, she lit a candle in her living room. She sat with his photo. She whispered prayers. She stayed still in her grief, letting it bloom fully without apology. I couldn't speak to the world, she said, because I was still trying to speak to him. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't a glossy magazine interview. When Phylicia Rashad finally chose to speak, she did it on her own terms, in her own way, quietly, and with the immense gravity of a mother in mourning. It was at a private memorial, with only close friends, former castmates, and family, held in New York exactly 10 days after Malcolm's passing. She finally stood to speak. The room was silent as she walked to the podium, dressed in a soft dark blue outfit that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. She looked both regal and completely shattered. For a few moments, she said nothing. She looked down at her notes, then up at the room. And then, softly but firmly, she began. When Malcolm was 14, he walked into my life with a backpack full of dreams and the biggest heart I'd ever seen in a child. He wasn't my son by blood, but God doesn't always choose blood when he chooses family. He was my son in every way that matters. She paused, her voice trembling. There are things I never said out loud to him, things I thought I'd have time for. I thought there would be more birthdays, more dinners, more stories. And now all I can do is say them here, to all of you. I was proud of him every single day, even when he was struggling, especially then. He made me a better woman, a better mother. And now the world feels dimmer because a light like Malcolm doesn't come around twice. By the time she finished, there wasn't a single dry eye in the room. Her silence had been deafening, but her words were thunder. The next morning, as the sun rose slowly over Manhattan, Phylicia Rashad slipped out of the public eye once again. The cameras were gone. The statements had been made. The media would speculate, analyze, and dissect her words. But Phylicia had something more important to do, something the headlines would never report on. She was going to see his daughter. She didn't want to intrude, so she waited quietly and respectfully. But Malcolm's family welcomed her without a moment's hesitation. They knew what she had meant to him. They knew he had spoken of her not just as a co-star, not even as a mentor, but as the woman who mothered me through manhood. When she arrived, his daughter, barely a teenager, ran straight into her arms. Phylicia held her tightly, pressing her cheek against the girl's braided hair, absorbing the grief, the confusion, and the loss that was far too large for any child to understand. "She looks just like him," Phylicia whispered later. "Same eyes, same smile, same stubborn strength." They sat together for hours that day, with no cameras, no press, and no recordings, just sharing stories, laughter through tears, and a safe space where grief could breathe without judgment. She told his daughter how much Malcolm had loved her, how he talked about her every time they spoke, and how he said that becoming a father was the greatest role of his life. She needed to know he didn't die as a man running from anything. Phylicia said afterward, "He died facing it all, his love, his purpose, his role as a father. That's what I wanted her to carry." After that visit, Phylicia returned home with something she hadn't expected. A box. Malcolm's family had given her one of his storage containers filled with old photos, letters, and special mementos. "He would have wanted you to have this," his sister had told her. She didn't open it right away. For days, it sat on her piano bench, completely untouched. The idea of going through his belongings felt like tampering with something sacred. But eventually, on a rainy afternoon, she lifted the lid. The smell of old paper, leather, and a faint cologne wafted out. The scent of history, of memory, of Malcolm. Inside were dozens of photos she had never seen. Candid shots from their early days on set, photos of cast outings, birthday parties, and table reads. There were little mementos. A ticket stub from a jazz concert they once attended. A note he wrote to her on Mother's Day that said, "To Mama Phi, for everything the world never saw you do for me. I love you." Her hands shook as she read it. The grief came in waves again, not loud and dramatic, but like the tide that had taken him. Slow, steady, and inevitable. She began to create a wall of remembrance in her home. Not a shrine, but a gallery. A beautiful tribute to their long journey together. "It helps," she said. "Having his memory exist in color, not just in pain." In the days that followed, every interview request felt like a burden. She didn't want to talk about Malcolm for ratings. She didn't want to reduce their sacred bond to simple sound bites. And yet, she understood her responsibility to honor him publicly, to remind the world that his life wasn't just a footnote in sitcom history. It was a legacy of dignity, growth, and quiet brilliance. So, she agreed to one interview, just one, with a Black-focused outlet that concentrated on intergenerational mentorship and legacy in entertainment. In the interview, she spoke softly and deliberately, as if every single word mattered. "I've worked with many young people in this industry," she said. "But Malcolm listened, not just to advice. He listened to your spirit. He paid attention. He carried wisdom like it was weightless. That's rare." When asked what she wanted the world to remember about him, she didn't hesitate. That he was kind, not performative, not public, truly kind. That he carried burdens most people never saw and still smiled. That he lived a life worthy of being deeply mourned. That episode became one of the podcast's most streamed episodes of all time. But Phylicia didn't care about numbers. She cared about truth. She had spoken her truth, and now she could find a moment of rest. A few weeks after the memorial, Phylicia Rashad found herself standing outside the gates of Silvercup Studios in Queens, New York, the very place where The Cosby Show had been filmed in its earliest seasons. She hadn't planned to go. In fact, she had avoided the place for years. But grief has its own gravity, and that day, it pulled her back to where it all began. The studio had long since moved on. New shows now occupied those halls. The echoes of the Huxtables were no longer in the walls. But for Phylicia, as she stepped onto that old lot, it was as if the 1980s came flooding back all at once. She stood in the corner where the kitchen had once been, where she had laughed with Malcolm over cold coffee between scenes. She walked past the space where their dressing rooms had to be, remembering the notes he'd sometimes leave taped to her mirror. "You got this, Mama," scribbled in his now familiar handwriting. It was like walking through a dream, she later described, but a dream where someone was missing from every frame. In the dim studio light, she stood still, as if trying to hear his voice one last time. And maybe, just maybe, in that long silence, she did. One night, around 3 a.m., Phylicia sat at her writing desk with nothing but a single lamp glowing beside her. The city outside was silent. She picked up a pen and a fresh sheet of paper and began to write a letter she knew she would never send. "Dear Malcolm," it began. She poured out everything: the pride, the heartbreak, the gratitude, the unsaid words. She wrote about how much she admired the father he had become, how beautiful his love for his daughter was. She wrote about the last phone call and how he had sounded like pure sunlight. She confessed her regrets, the conversations they never finished, the hug she assumed she had more time to give. She wrote about how lonely the world felt now, how her mornings didn't start with his texts anymore, and how even music felt emptier without him sending her jazz recommendations every week. Near the end of the letter, she wrote something she had only whispered in prayer before. "If I could have traded places with you, I would have, but maybe heaven needed you more than we did." When she finished, she folded the letter neatly, tied it with a small ribbon, and placed it in her memory box, the same box that now held his photo, that old backstage note, and the program from his memorial. She didn't need the world to read it. She just needed to say it. Phylicia Rashad released one final public statement. It was a letter that read, "To those who loved him, I want to thank you for mourning him with me. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was a son to me, in ways that cannot be measured by credits or contracts or camera time. He was light. He was grace. He was the kind of man we hope our sons become and our daughters meet. I have never known someone to carry fame so humbly, pain so quietly, and joy so generously. His laughter still echoes in my home. His wisdom still lingers in my ears. And his love, most of all, remains stitched into the very fabric of who I am. We shared years. We shared moments. We shared silence. We shared the kind of bond that defies explanation. And though the world may move on, I will not let him fade. Not in my heart. Not in my voice. Not in the work I do from this day forward. The Warner Rashad Legacy Initiative will continue in his honor. Because love must do more than grieve. It must grow. To his daughter, you are your father's heartbeat, and I am here for you always. And to Malcolm, my dear son, I will see you again. Until then, keep watching over us. With all the love I never got to say aloud, Phylicia Rashad." If this story moved you, please don't forget to like this video to honor Malcolm-Jamal Warner's incredible life and the love Phylicia Rashad so bravely shared. And be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos that uncover the stories that deserve to be remembered forever. Also, leave a comment below with your favorite memory of Malcolm. Thank you for being here. We remember. We grieve. We honor together.